loud environment.
Yeah, it is. But that's part of the party. By the way, folks, welcome to this episode of the Peterson's Farms Podcast. Let's just get right to it. We're at the World Food Championships, the ultimate food fight. I got Jay Ducote.
That's it. You nailed it.
I nailed it. Sweet. I'm always a little afraid I'm going to mispronounce somebody's name, but that's okay. You just correct me and we move on. Fix that mic. Make it comfortable.
Perfect.
We got plenty of time. This is no big rush. Tell you what, I'm going to come help you.
I think I got it.
Okay, straighten it out a little bit.
Yes,
all right,
sir.
Good. All right, sweet. We're picking you up good on the mic. So anyways,
Great.
We're off. And there you go. That's the way the world works. Like, anybody thinks you don't bump into, like, stuff you need to fix, even on a podcast. So anyways, Jay, thanks for the time. Thanks for saying yes. As I was coming to the World Food Championship, I get to judge the bacon category.
Love it.
I love to be involved with this community, really. Chefs doing cool stuff that gets me to thinking, man, what's a product we might make that suits their needs better?
Sure.
You're a chef, you travel, you cook, you are on the stage talking about teams as they're turning in. So tell me a little bit about who you are. Like, where'd you come from?
Yeah, so born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Ducote is a Cajun French name. So you nailed the pronunciation of it. But yeah.
Wait, time out, just so everybody knows. I cheated.
Well, that's
fair. They've been saying his name about 50 times today.
I've been on stage, but yeah. So grew up some in Baton Rouge, and then in Sugarland, Texas. So second grade through high school, I was in the Houston area.
Yeah.
And then moved back to Baton Rouge to go to LSU, and studied economics and political science, and then decided that's not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. But I didn't know what I wanted to do for a little while, and it took me a little bit to find food. I taught high school math and coached baseball for a couple years, and then worked for the state of Louisiana doing policy research and grant writing. And
wow.
I was bored out of my mind.
Dude, you do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that's a wide range of things.
It is. It was a job. I was in a cubicle, and I was bored, and I started writing about food. So I actually got into the food world through blogging, and then through social media, and then through podcasts and radio, and then doing TV shows.
Yeah.
The first TV show I ever did was season 2 of MasterChef on Fox with Gordon Ramsay. I didn't make it very far, but it was a cool experience, and I said, I want to do more of that. And 4 years later, I was runner-up on season 11 of Food Network Star, and a couple years later, I was beating Bobby Flay on the show. Beat Bobby Flay.
What'd you beat him with?
Crawfish Boil.
Yeah.
Louisiana
he was
Crawfish
way
Boil.
behind from the beginning.
Yeah. I've done a lot of competition barbecue in between all that, and really, what I've really done is kind of find a way to eat and drink and travel for a living, but also to really kind of be a culinary ambassador for Louisiana, for local restaurants, for other chefs, just really celebrating food and culture.
Yeah.
And doing that kind of any way that I can through.
Well, you do it really well because
media.
You have a passion for it. Like, it shows. Like, that's one thing that makes, I think, you so successful is you're not pretending.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. And I think about this podcast and the purpose of it, why we do it. It is this. It is this exact conversation to talk about where food comes from.
Yeah.
In your perspective. And what's really cool about talking to you is you know a lot of chefs. You know a lot of cultures, and especially through your travels, through the things you do, through the competitions.
Yeah.
That's the insight I want to give our listeners. Like, okay, so you beat Bobby Flay with a crawfish boil. Sounds kind of unfair. Like, how did you pull that off?
Right, yeah. Well, they let you pick your signature dish. I don't understand why people challenge them to, a burger cook-off or a pork chop or something.
Right.
Like, pick something that he doesn't know how to cook.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I cheated a little bit, but it's not cheating. It was within the rules.
That's part of the rules. That's right.
I said that's what I wanted to challenge them to, and they were able to do it.
But, in fact, most everybody's rooting for the underdog to beat Bobby Flay.
Well,
so for the show,
Yeah.
it's kind of good for Bobby to lose.
Oh yeah, so he wins about 70% of the episode. Just historically, that's roughly the math, you know. And the culinary team, the producers of the show that work for Bobby Flay, by the way, he owns the production company that makes that show.
Right.
But like their job is to try to get him beat.
Yeah.
Their job is to try to find chefs and try to get those chefs to come cook a dish that might actually stump him.
Yeah.
Because he's that good. He actually is that good.
I know. So what about Gordon? Is he that good?
I'm sure he is. I mean, I've never cooked against him. You know, the episode of MasterChef that I did in 2011, I got to cook one dish that I presented to him. And it was a herb-roasted rack of venison with a Cajun shrimp and cornbread stuffed bell pepper and a bourbon cream sauce. And again, this was 2011. I was pretty green at cooking.
Yeah.
I had not done much professional cooking. I really was a amateur home cook, food blogger. And in 2011, food blogging hadn't even been around that long.
Right.
And I was cooking on the third day of the 4-day run of everybody's opening round, basically.
Yeah.
And another guy that wasn't cooking until day 4, it was his birthday that day. And so after I had the venison and the stuffed bell pepper in the oven, I was making this bourbon cream sauce. Well, I had this huge bottle of bourbon, and it was this guy's birthday, so we took a shot of bourbon.
Yeah.
And a producer came running from across this warehouse. I mean, it's like a warehouse that looks like what we're in right now at the World Food Championships. You know, this producer comes running over like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm thinking, like, man, I must have signed a contract or something that said I wouldn't drink because now if I cut the tip of my finger off,
right.
They let me drink or I don't know. And she was like, well, like, did y'all just take shots or something? And I was just like, well, yeah, you know, it's his birthday. And she's like, well, we didn't get it on camera. Can you do it again? I was just TV production.
There
Got
you
it.
go.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I can do it again for camera. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, then like
so did you
3
spit it
shots
out
later,
after? Yeah, I was going to
no.
say.
Of course not. So then when I finally get in to actually present my dish to Gordon Ramsay and company, of course they've got producers in their ears telling them what to say and stuff. So I've got this giant bottle of Knob Creek, and Gordon's like, have you been drinking that? And I was like, yeah, I had a couple shots while I was cooking. Well, like, that was the only thing that made national television.
Yeah.
Was Gordon Ramsay saying, have you been drinking that? And me saying, I had a couple shots while I was cooking.
That's the risk, you know. I think for listeners, I mean, some of you are going to get the opportunity to be a part of stuff that Jay has done, similar, shows. Just go in with your eyes wide open that you're not in charge of the editing.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, or somehow negotiate some kind of editorial control, if you've got that kind of magic up your sleeve.
If you can do that somehow, good on you. But you're not going to be able to on those competition shows and stuff.
In fact, really, you probably wouldn't want to because they need to make it engaging.
Yeah.
It's their livelihood. That's what
right.
they do. They cut and edit these shows to make them successful.
Yep.
I'm not sure that you or I would know exactly how to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Their job is to make a TV show that gets an audience, it gets ratings, and sells advertising. And you know what I've done when I chopped and Cutthroat Kitchen and beat Bobby Flay and then Food Network Star, which is really the biggest show that I've done. But every show that I've done after that, like, just put a smile on my face, go in, have fun, and it's really what I did on MasterChef too. I just didn't make it very far, and I was in a montage.
I feel like you have such a great
and,
attitude about it, though.
Yeah.
It's like it didn't end your journey. It wasn't the worst thing ever.
Yeah, thank you. It was 13 years ago, so I've had a little time.
Yeah, you got over it a little while ago.
A little time to process.
Okay, so at the moment, how did it feel?
But it was pretty devastating. At the moment, it was. But it was.
Well, why is that? Because you thought this is my career. I'm fixing to be. This is what's going to make me.
It was an opportunity that I at least thought at the time that if I went out to Los Angeles and I performed well on MasterChef, then I could maybe turn this food blog and this idea to do something in food into a career. But if I didn't do well, then I probably just had to go home and go back to my boring cubicle day job.
Or go back to teaching. Or
and I didn't do well. You know, so I made that herb roasted rack of venison and the Cajun shrimp and cornbread stuffed bell pepper. Gordon Ramsay was the first one to walk up, and he cut the stuffed bell pepper in half, and he took a bite of the stuffing, and then he didn't say a word. He just handed me a fork and made me taste my own food. And so I tasted the cornbread and shrimp stuffing, and I was like, it needs more salt, chef. And he's like, more salt? It needs more everything. The venison's cooked perfectly, but the bell pepper, it's bland. What a shame, what a shame. And he walked off, and then the other judges basically said the same thing. And then that show, it's kind of like American Idol, but it's like they didn't give me an apron, so I didn't move on to the next round. Like, they sent me home. And, you know, in hindsight, no big deal.
Right, at the moment,
I really wanted that apron. I wanted to move on to the next round. I thought there was a lot riding on it.
And there's a lot of education, a lot of experience, a lot of relationship building. I mean, if I'm thinking about it, and I'm not a chef, I make bacon, sausage, ham for a living. I mean, we want to talk about where food comes from. We want to be a member of the community.
Perfect.
But I'm not cooking food for a living in front of people. So the chance to meet Gordon and build a relationship is valuable.
Sure.
And when you get cut first, you're gone.
Yep.
You don't get to.
That's right.
If you stay around a while, you get to build maybe a little more rapport with these guys who can help.
Yeah.
So I totally understand your perspective.
Yeah. Fortunately, I came back to Louisiana kind of with my tail between my legs, but then kind of immediately got some other opportunities back home, and it was almost like I wasn't good enough for that national show out in Hollywood, but I am doing things right and doing things well back home, and I just need to keep going. And I also liked the experience. I liked being on set. I liked filming the TV show, and I knew I wanted to do more of it. I just also knew that I needed to get better at it.
Right.
And so it became motivation. It became a failure that turned into motivation and said, if I want to be successful at this, I have to get better at it, and I have to work hard at it. And it's not...
Man, I love your story. I love the way you approach it. I love the way you think about it. I think people need to do that in business.
Yep.
If you own a brand, if you're in the food business, if you're a chef, there's so much value in what Jay's saying. All right, so let's depart from that a little bit and talk about... So Peterson's, what we do, what we hang our hat on is claims-based proteins, animal proteins.
I love it.
Better for you, bacon, sausage, ham. Our pigs are raised in pen gestation. We don't use crates. We don't use antibiotics. How do you feel like? I mean, I'm just looking for a feeling, some kind of insight into what that means for a chef or a restaurant.
Yeah.
I think it's great, but a lot of
Yeah.
times it costs more.
Yep.
It costs more, so
Sure.
at the restaurant level, you're kind of like, I don't know, am I going to get, are my customers interested?
Yeah, that's right. And what can you do with it? So to back up a little bit more about me, and then we'll go forward. So I grew up in suburban Houston, but doing a lot of, I was pretty outdoors and really more rural than Sugarland might sound, but I was the president of my high school FFA.
There we go.
I raised some animals growing up. Never a pig, but I was around some pig farmers, and I've always I grew up doing a lot of hunting and fishing, and my dad taught me from a very early age to respect the animals, respect where our food comes from, to know where our food comes from first.
Yeah.
Learned at least some wild game butchery early on, and then through my culinary life have gotten to learn more on the whole animal nose to tail dining and using the whole carcass, but that was instilled in me very early on through hunting and doing a lot of whitetail deer hunting in South Texas and wild hogs and quail and rabbits and
Sure.
you name it. Rattlesnake. So I've always had that, and I think as I've gotten into the food world, I've always really kind of fallen back on a lot of those lessons from FFA days and from hunting and fishing growing up, and I think that's really helped me understand food, because I understand where food comes from, and I understand the sanctity of life there, and that if we're going to put something on a plate, that did come from an animal at some point, and it does matter how that animal was raised, how that animal was harvested, what kind of life that animal had. And look, I want to eat meat. I would prefer to eat meat that was from an animal that had a happy life, right, or that had a better life than just a cage. So I really do appreciate that sort of more sustainable, more humane agriculture. It's definitely not. My preference would always be to work towards that, not to just say, let's just not eat meat, right? Like that, respect to people for whatever decision they want to make. But my response to anti-huge, humongous factory farming would be, let's get back to that more humane farming practice.
Yeah.
Are you doing with your pork? What sort of breeds are you working with?
We're all Duroc sired, so we're trying to stay heritage breed.
Yeah.
At least on that side, we do use a white female. She's a cross between a landrace and a white Cheshire White. And really, that's for the mothering abilities and the litter size. So that's it gets so intricate, really, when you start talking farming and trying to educate people. Like, we're making decisions really for financial reasons, but we can't lose sight of the quality and the life of the animal, these kind of things. So we're putting a white mama in there because she has a few more piglets. She mothers them well. She produces a lot of milk. So these pigs get a really robust start from their first 7 to 20 days. You know, that makes them perform well as food and as a industry or a for-profit business.
You got to. That has to be part of it.
That's right. So Duroc sired, that's the females we use.
Neat. I mean, that Duroc pork, I mean, it's fantastic.
It's good. Yeah.
And one other thing I have generally found, you could educate me and our listeners on this a lot. Tell me if what I've heard is correct or not. But one reason that I do prefer to get pork from a more from somebody like you instead of just a humongous
big factory farm
pork
or
factory is essentially the water content that you're paying for weight, and the water content in the meat that you're buying from the big factory farms and stuff. Well, that pork's going to be so injected and salt content, water content already in that vacuum seal that ultimately,
I mean, this is the details. This is the nitty gritty.
Right. You're paying less per pound, but a lot of the pounds that you're paying for in that case of pork are
sodium, phosphate, and water. Yeah. I think it might be a little unfair to say factory farms in that case. It's really poor quality pork. Okay. And I know factory farms that make high quality pork. Okay. But
that's fair.
They will turn out a little bit more poor quality pork than the normal guy. But what happens is you get a poor quality pork, and that's what they're trying to do. Everybody overcooks a pork chop, to death.
Correct.
So they're trying to make that eating experience a little more, good, better.
Yeah.
So they're trying to hold the moisture. Yeah. Pump it with sodium phosphate water. That does make it a little cheaper because they're selling the water. You bet, brine. I love that. I hope all the listeners will just think about that. When you go to the store, just kind of pay attention to those labels. They'll say water added. Like you'll buy a ham, it says water added.
That's right.
Everything we make is back to green. We got no water added in the product. So everything you're buying is real animal protein, meat. So you're not buying the water. And it's tempting. It's tempting to find ingredients that'll hold the water. Because you're like, dang, I mean, it's hard to sell this because it's a little more expensive. But you just have to spend the time educating people, and that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Talking, long-form scenario, or you can ask questions. I could be like, oh, wow, Jay, like, how do y'all think about this? When I say y'all, I mean the culinary community, because, I mean, I'm kind of on the outskirts of it. I'm not like in the inner circle. Yeah, that's the deal. We don't do any pumping of anything. I just encourage people, don't overcook your pork chop, and you'll enjoy it.
In your sausage making, have you played around with any Cajun-style smoked meats? Any Cajun sausage, andouille or tasso?
I don't recognize the second one.
Andouille?
No, the andouille. Yeah, what'd you say?
Tasso?
Tasso.
Yeah.
Is that a sausage?
It's not
I've
a
heard
sausage.
tasso ham.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, cool. I'm familiar with it. We don't make a product like that. We do have an andouille sausage. We've made it chicken andouille, pork andouille. We're not great at it. It's like I kind of don't even mind admitting it because anybody that comes along is going to figure it out. Like a really good andouille sausage, really good boudin, really good these foods that you know about.
Yeah.
They really almost have to come from Cajun country. I mean, I can't.
Look, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to find that stuff outside of Louisiana.
Yeah.
Especially to find it done right.
Right.
You can find something in a Wegmans in Pennsylvania that's labeled andouille. It's not like the andouille they're going to find in a Cajun meat market in South Louisiana.
Well, that's kind of the challenge for restaurateurs, brands like me that make products. Food is emotional in my mind. It has to be almost. And if I can't make a product that will replicate the emotion you have from that andouille that was made either by your family or some close there's something like. If I said, I bet you could say, I know the best andouille. It's right here. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, do you? Like, who makes the best andouille?
It's a great question. Man, there's...
Is it you?
No, I don't... Look, sausage making's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, everybody thinks you just grind up some meat, put it in a casing, and you got sausage. I have made some fresh sausages before. I haven't done a whole lot of smoked sausages on my own. And really, it's been a while since I played around with any of it. Yeah.
In Louisiana, it's so easy to find really good smoked sausage and andouille and all that stuff that there's not much of a reason to make it yourself. And there's so many.
Like gumbo?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I love gumbo. I'm still not great at it, but...
So favorite andouille. There's a bunch of them that I really do like that you can find at supermarkets and meat markets around. There's a brand called French Settlement that I find in some of my local supermarkets in Baton Rouge that I really like. But there's
what makes you like it? Do you know?
So andouille and really all. The Louisiana sausage culture and smoked meat culture, maybe not all the smoked meat culture, but certainly the sausage making, and andouille in particular, traces its way back to Germans, and Germans that settled in South Louisiana, which you don't think about that too much when you think about all the French in South Louisiana. But they're... Certainly New Orleans, as a huge port city in the New World, had all sorts of communities that settled in it, all sorts of European cultures that were there. There were a lot of Spanish, a lot of Italian, a lot of English, and quite a few Germans. There's a town in Louisiana not far from New Orleans called Des Allemands. Well, Des Allemands is French for the Germans.
Okay.
So it's there was a pocket of Germans, and they brought sausage making with them, and that andouille was the South Louisiana German sausage. Yeah. But it's a very coarse pork sausage, so it's not a fine grind on the sausage. It's almost like a chop
texture. Almost. Yeah. Sometimes you'll hear that about sausage a lot. It's it's not so much the spice or the flavor. It's more the texture and the eating experience.
Yeah. It's a coarse sausage. Then I'd say it's packed pretty tight and it's smoked, cuts into a beautiful ring.
Yeah.
That's what it takes. It's got a little spice to it for sure, but it's not overly spiced. It's seasoned, but it's not just red pepper. It's got more to it than that. But I would imagine that a lot of the Texas smoked sausage culture also stems from the Germans.
That's right.
The same ones that brought Shiner Bock to Texas. And so it's interesting that it's the German immigrants to the Americas
that sausage
that settled in different parts, but they all brought the sausage making with them.
Yeah, it is cool. Another high five is for you, or a high five to you, is like you're just kind of a history buff too. I find that in a lot of culinary types. Like there's a certain history to the art that you really enjoy as well. It's like, hey, cool, this style, this came from here. Like that's a piece of it. So really cool.
Yeah. Well, I think you can talk about knowing where our food comes from in the sense of where was this animal raised, or what part of the animal am I eating, or who grew my Brussels sprouts, but also knowing where did the idea for this dish come from? How many generations has somebody been making this, or making a sausage this way, or cooking this particular dish, or making a recipe, or I have for a while now. Like what really, as I think I was kind of saying earlier, like I got into food through the blog and writing and radio and podcasts, and like the stories behind food. Before I really got into cooking, it was the storytelling, and it was. And like I got a master's degree in political science, and then I said I don't want to do that anymore. But when I found food, and when I found like that, I love that part of food. I love the history, the culture, the stories of food.
Yeah, and that's where food comes from. It really is. I mean, that's like the mic drop. Great. Thank you for your time. Everybody, if you've listened to this, I guarantee, I just know you love Jay. So where would they come find you? Like, how can they hear more about you?
Yeah, social media, Facebook, Instagram are probably the two biggest, at Jay Ducote, JayDucote. So there's at Jay Ducote and at Jay Ducote Travel on Instagram. And then on Facebook, it's Jay Ducote. There's a Jay Ducote page and a Jay Ducote Travel page as well. There's same thing on Twitter or X. There's also a Jay Ducote TikTok if you want to go that direction. You can find links to all that at jducote.com.
Yeah, there you go. So, that's the website. Go to the hub. Go to jducote.com.
Yep.
You can find out. You can just go check his content out all over. I imagine there's still some blogs on there.
Yeah, there's jducote.com is really kind of the newer site. There are some blogs on there. You can see some of what I've been up to lately. Find links to all the social media stuff. Sign up for email newsletter, all that stuff.
Awesome. Y'all go do it. TCP. I don't know why I said TCP. I do another podcast. It's called The Cowboy Perspective.
Nice.
So I call it TCP. But this is the Peterson Natural Farms family.
Yeah.
All you PNFers out there, go check out Jay. Tell him you heard him at the World Food Championship on our podcast. It'll be a really cool thing. And really hats off to the World Food Championship, this ultimate food fight that's going on. It's really cool. But, really, all the chefs that come participate, really great job, everybody. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.